There will be massive spoilers in this video for The Mandalorian Episode 8 entitled Redemption, and if you have not watched Chapter 8 of The Mandalorian, I urge you to go do so specifically before watching this video, as there is an absolutely massive, awesome cliffhanger at the end of this episode that I'm going to talk about in depth. In fact, this video will mostly revolve around the ending and the final scene of The Mandalorian Chapter 8 rather than a full breakdown. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and get into it, and mainly talk about the final scene, but again, we'll set up a little bit beforehand. The episode ends with the Mandalorian's crew, with the exception of IG-11, who gives his life to save the crew, making it out alive, and Mando, after receiving a brand new shiny jetpack, or referred to as Phoenix Fire, taking out the TIE fighter that is being piloted by Moff Gideon. Moff Gideon, who was present during the Mandalorian Purge, and is how he actually knows the true name of Mando, as Mando was still training to become a full-fledged Mandalorian when the Great Mandalorian Purge occurred, as he had mentioned in this episode that he had nearly completed his training. The Great Mandalorian Purge is not an event that we know a whole lot about in the Star Wars universe currently, but I am absolutely positive it will be fleshed out later, with Moff Gideon even pulling out a weapon that he referenced absolutely mowed down Mandalorians during this Great Purge. This purge is also very significant, as well as Moff Gideon's presence here, as this is most definitely where Moff Gideon acquired the Darksaber. I have a full video laid out where we'll detail all of the history of the Darksaber and how exactly it has led to Moff Gideon's possession. But for now, I'll just give you the gist of exactly what happened. At the end of the Star Wars Rebels series, Sabine Wren actually gifts the Darksaber to Bo-Katan, who is the sister of the Duchess Satine, who was originally killed by the Darksaber back in the Clone Wars era by Darth Maul. Sabine then decides out to pave her own path in the galaxy along with the Rebel Alliance, and leaves the Darksaber in possession of Bo-Katan, who unites Mandalore under its rule. It is likely here when the Great Purge ensues, and the Empire witnesses all of this uprising on Mandalore. And with Mandalore no longer being aided by the Rebel Alliance, the Empire attacked, resulting in the Great Purge, a Great Purge where Mando was present. The Great Purge was an event in which the Galactic Empire came into conflict with the Mandalorians. The event resulted in the Empire gathering Beskar, and most of the Mandalorian people being killed, forcing the tribe to operate in secrecy. The Great Purge occurred sometime in the Imperial era against the Mandalorians by the Galactic Empire, and from what we know of Star Wars Rebels, it took place near the end of the Empire's reign, just before the events of Star Wars A New Hope actually, as the Great Purge of Mandalore would be one of the final spits in the face to the galaxy that the Empire would deal. It was during this time that the Mandalorian Beskar was gathered and cast into Imperial smolders as spoils from the Purge, and most of the Mandalorians were subsequently killed by the Empire, the event that led to the Mandalorian group known as the Tribe operating in secrecy after the fall of the Empire. It is clear though that Moff Gideon from this Great Purge took the Darksaber back from himself, after Sabine Wren took the Darksaber from Maul, and this is exactly how he has come into possession of the weapon. Again, I will go over the full history of the Darksaber in a later video, but this is basically everything you need to know. At the end of the Clone Wars and during the rise of the Galactic Empire, Darth Maul still possessed the Darksaber, as a weapon that he claimed for himself after defeating Pre Vizsla in single combat for rights over Mandalore. The Darksaber was then taken to Dathomir during the reign of the Galactic Empire, where Darth Maul himself hid out. Maul chose to keep the Darksaber in the Night Sister lair. Sabine Wren used it against Ezra Bridger while she was possessed by a Night Sister spirit. Ezra used his lightsaber and the Darksaber to destroy the altar in which the spirits rose. Sabine then picked up the Darksaber as she, Ezra, and Kanan Jarrus left the planet, realizing that the Darksaber was in fact crafted by an ancient Mandalorian Jedi, and the first ever Mandalorian inducted into the Jedi Order. However, Sabine was hesitant to use the Darksaber as she knew the implications that came along with the blade. The fact that by using it, she denoted herself as Mandalore and leader all of Mandalorian culture, just as the blade had reunited Mandalorians in the warring decades of the past. Sabine would then be trained in lightsaber combat by the Jedi Knight Kanan Jarrus. However, many disputed that if Sabine had actually claimed the Darksaber for her own, as she never actually defeated Darth Maul in single combat to claim the weapon. And because of this, Sabine was forced to face another Mandalorian once they took the Darksaber for themselves. After doing this though, Sabine realized that she would not be the individual that would reunite Mandalore, but that it would rather be Bo-Katan. However, Bo-Katan turned it down at first. It was during a mission where Sabine Wren first met Bo-Katan and offered her the sword, but Bo-Katan turned it down as she felt she was unworthy and had already had her chance to rule Mandalore, but had utterly failed. Later, Sabine and Bo-Katan led a raid on the Mandalorian governor Tiber Saxon's Star Destroyer in order to destroy the Duchess, the superweapon Sabine had built during her days as an Imperial cadet. Sabine used the Darksaber to breach the Duchess's core, causing a chain reaction that led to the Star Destroyer's destruction and Tiber's death. After the raid, she finally persuaded Bo-Katan to accept the weapon, by showing her that other clans were willing to follow her for stating that the Force had brought the saber to her, so she, in turn, could pass it on to Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan accepted the sword in memory of her sister Satine, and for the honor of her clan and Mandalore itself. It would be after this that the Age of the Empire would come for Mandalore officially, creating the Great Mandalorian Purge, where the Empire would kill many of the Mandalorians, likely Bo-Katan personally, and taking not only the Darksaber for their own, but also the Beskar armor. Again, Moff Gideon was personally here, and likely after the battle stripped the Darksaber from the dead hands of Bo-Katan, which is why we see him in possession of it in the end of The Mandalorian Chapter 8. Moff Gideon worked in the Security Bureau of the Empire, and held personal knowledge on every single one of the foundlings on Mandalore that were executed, and some that even managed to escape. It is likely that the years after the Great Purge of Mandalore that Moff Gideon has personally held the lightsaber in his collection, as again a trophy of the days of Great Mandalore gone by. The importance of the Darksaber's arrival in The Mandalorian is far more than simply an introduction of a lightsaber into the series. The Darksaber is a one-of-a-kind, and also signifies a ruler of Mandalore. The Darksaber was an ancient and unique black-bladed lightsaber created by Tar Vizsla, the first Mandalorian ever inducted into the Jedi Order, prior to 10,000 years before the events of A New Hope. The weapon was kept in the Jedi Temple after Vizsla's passing, but members of House Vizsla stole the saber in a conflict with the Jedi during the fall of the First Republic. The Darksaber was passed down generation to generation by the ancestors of Pre-Vizsla, who held on to the weapon even after the pacifist ideals of the new Mandalorians replaced the warrior ways of the original Mandalore. It was respected by Mandalorians as a symbol for the leadership of House Vizsla, and later the group known as Death Watch. According to Mandalorian custom, one could only obtain the Darksaber by defeating the previous owner in single combat. Should they have claimed the weapon any other way, this claim would be illegitimate. Descendants of House Vizsla used the Darksaber for many generations to kill many Jedi, and rule Mandalore for several decades, all united under this one legendary lightsaber. The Darksaber also has some really unique properties that I'd also like to briefly touch on, that separate it from other lightsabers that we know in Star Wars canon. The Darksaber had a crystal which served as a conduit for Force energy. The wielder's thoughts and actions guided the blade's current of power, with the blade often producing an electrical effect in response to heightened emotional states. The Darksaber was also capable of parrying other lightsaber blades, with them being drawn to each other in an almost magnetic pull. Anyway though guys, again I have a full history of the Darksaber video planned, but what are your thoughts on the final episode of The Mandalorian in this season? Just as a little update, they're still currently shooting the second season of The Mandalorian right now, meaning that we will likely get The Mandalorian Season 2 sometime next November. Not too long of a wait, especially after this massive cliffhanger. We also have some other stuff I want to talk about in the finale, but this is absolutely the biggest one. Anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this twist ending for The Mandalorian and the introduction of the Darksaber into the series? Do you guys like this addition, and do you think it adds a lot to the story moving forward? Anyway, my friends, thank you as always so much for watching. If you enjoyed this longer video, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a like. May the Force be with you, and have a great day.